So on Tuesday, we talked about relational databases and how databases can have tables within them that relate to each other in multiple ways. So these ways can be one-to-one, where the item has a relationship to one specific thing. It can also be one-to-many, where you have one item that has many sub-items. You can also have many-to-many, where many items can relate to many things, and so on. So now we're gonna demo off one of the examples of that. So a one-to-one example, one-to-many example, based off of the work we've done in the previous demo, which was redoing the tasks app with databases. So our goal today is to be able to make subtasks for our tasks. We're gonna work on using the same demo code from last week. So here we have the code. We have our, let me delete this file. That's fine. We have app.py. Right now it has just get tasks like before. We have create tasks, which creates tasks. We have get specific tasks, update tasks, delete tasks, and so on. And I'm not sure if this was shown last week, but one thing that's new on this code is these two functions, success response and failure response. These are just quality of life functions that make it easy for you to return data from your functions. So like if I was in create task and I was successfully able to make a task, instead of saying JSON dumps, I'll just pass in my task dictionary into there along with my status code. And success response would just return the JSON dumps of the data and just the code. And it makes it easier because of the fact that you can have default codes by just saying code equals a default. And you can also do the same for errors. So if I were to say like something went wrong with the task, like creating a task, I could just say return failure response and then put in a string that's like the error. And then it would just return the dumps with an error and then the error message with the code, which is default 404. It doesn't change too much. You probably can live without it, but it's pretty nice to have these generalized response formats. So these functions are really cool to have, but you can make whatever you want. So now we have our task functions. One thing I kind of want to show you guys before we continue is that if you have VS Code and you want to use SQLite in the future, if you go to extensions and type in SQLite, so let's let it load. If you install this extension on top here, install that, you guys want to look at it. It allows you to open up your SQLite database files. So right now I have a todo.db that was made when I ran the code. If I click on right click it like this, I can click on open database because of this extension. And then it pops up on the bottom here. If I click this, I can actually view the database. I can see its tables, its fields. And if I click this play button, you can also see the data contained within the table. It's gonna take a little bit though. Yeah, I added this a bit earlier. So yeah, this is a very nice extension to have so that you can have more clarity in debugging your code if you have an issue with it, you know. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. So we have our tasks, and now we want to implement the subtasks. So if I had a task like do homework, I might have subtasks like do question 1, question 2, question 3, and those would all belong to the main homework task, right? So we can start off by working on the app.py functions. Let me bring this up. I should start with the database. So in db.py, it's still very much the same as the last week's demo where it just creates tasks with the database. But we want to make a new table for storing our subtasks. This will have a one-to-many or many-to-one relationship with tasks. So in create subtask table, let me go over here. So as always, we want to have strings to doc strings to define how our functions work so other people can read them. So create subtask table using SQL creates a subtask table. Subtask table. And here we'll just try to make a table. So we'll say try exception as E, and then print the error. Oh no. So if our table somehow so if our code crashes because creating a table, we will want to continue, but we also want to see the error. In some cases, you might just want to have the error, so you wouldn't have this. But for now, we'll keep this here. And inside, we're going to say self.con execute, like before. We'll make a doc string. Oh, man. And we're going to create table subtasks. So we'll create table subtasks. It's going to have an ID. It'll be an integer primary key, and it'll auto increment. It'll also have a description. It'll be not null, so we have to have a description. And also it will, yeah, this is kind of getting annoying. And we'll also have the done Boolean. So this would be an integer. It could be 1 or 0. Not null. So subtasks in this case are just the same as tasks. They can have descriptions and they can be finished or not. The only difference we're going to have here is that it's going to have a reference to the parent task. So integer, not null. So task ID will reference its parent task. And this will be a foreign key. We'll call it task ID. And it will reference tasks.id or tasks ID. And we want a semicolon, and that should be good. We might also want to delete the subtask table. So let me see up here. So in delete subtask table, we're just going to write self.con execute and then drop. Let's see. Yeah, drop table. And we only want to delete it if it exists. So if exists. And then a table is called subtasks. This is just how you would do it. You probably wouldn't want to use this function ever. But now we want to be able to create our tables when we start the code if it doesn't exist. So we have to put it in our init function. One thing we need to do is probably say if not exists for these two. Yeah, we only want to create a table if they don't exist. So in your create subtask table, don't forget to write if not exists. Just so you don't do it twice. I think it'll make an error. And then in init, we want to create the subtask table. Create subtask table. Okay, nice. So if I run this code, oh, I think it is syntax error. Yeah, this is references with an S. I run this and I refresh my file system. I'm going to open up my database with the extension. And now I have a subtask table in the bottom left, and it has the description, the done, and task ID, which is nice. Now we're gonna get working on the basic CRUD endpoints. We can start off with creating subtask. Go back here. So this is the endpoint for this is going to be /tasks And we need to specify the task ID that this subtask will belong to. And then after that, you want to add the subtask after that so that we can know that we're not just viewing this, we're not updating this task, but we're actually creating a new subtask for that parent task. And this will be a post method. So for create subtask, this will be an endpoint that does the following. So be an endpoint for creating a subtask with no, for task, going to be task ID. For task with the ID, task ID. So when we create a subtask, we're going to need the body and the done boolean. Actually, no, we'll just assume it's going to be false at the beginning. But we still need a description. So from the body, from the request data, we'll load it into JSON, request.data, like before, and then we'll store the description into description. First of all, we need to check if the parent task does exist. So first, to do that, we have to actually use one of our database functions. The task equals db and then dot get task by ID. This function exists in database.py from last week. Let me find it. Here, get task by ID. It takes in the task ID. It'll select from the table, the task table for the task with that ID, and then return that task. So if with this, we have to actually add the task ID. So that'll be task underscore ID, like that. And then if task is none, since we look here, it can return none if there's no tasks found. Then we can use our failure response to return failure response and say that parent task wasn't found. But if we do find a task, then we should start creating a subtask. So we can name subtask ID equals db dot insert subtask. We didn't make this variable, but we didn't make this function quite yet though. So insert subtask, and then subtask equals db dot get subtask by ID. So we can't quite write this yet since we didn't actually make these functions. So let's start off with insert subtask. I think that if we want to insert a subtask to our database, we're going to want to have our description. We want to have done, if that's a Boolean, true or false. And then we want to have a task ID that it's being linked to. So let me go to db.py. Let's go down to insert subtask. So yeah, insert subtask takes in the description and takes in its status. And we can also say parent ID. And so go here. We should define this with our docstring. Let me turn off the server. It's kind of slowing down my laptop, I think. So this will, using SQL, using SQL, insert subtask will add a new subtask into the subtask table. This won't be too complicated. We just need to have our cursor, and we can just make a SQL statement. Insert into subtasks, description, done, task ID. And then we want to have question marks here for parameters if we plugged in. And then we can say, we can put in the variables we pass in. So description, done, and then parent ID. I'm gonna make this look a bit better. There, that's better. Let's see what's wrong with this. That's fine. So we insert into the subtask table the subtask tasks description, if it's done, and its task ID. Yeah. And then we'll commit this change. So self.con.commit. And we want to return the cursor's last row ID. So we can actually have access to that new subtask. I think this is good. And now we can actually run this function. And since we're making a new subtask, we're going to assume it's not finished. So done will just be false. Okay. And now subtask ID will be the ID. And we want to actually get the subtask so we can send it back to the what do you call it? The output. So with the next function, get subtask by ID, this will just take in the ID. And now we should get to implement some now. So where is it? Get subtask by ID. This will need a docstring as well. And then using SQL, oh, not all caps. Oh, open up settings. My laptop's really laggy, so like I'm making some other typos. So using SQL, get subtask by ID will get a subtask by its ID. And then we can just say cursor equals self.con.execute. And then we want to say select all from subtasks where the ID equals the ID we've been passed in. And then this will just be the ID. I think we do, when you make the parameters input, you want to have a comma at the end so it knows the tuple. If you take off the comma, I think it just gets rid of the commas. So make sure you have, it gets rid of the parentheses. So make sure to have a comma at the end, just in case. And now for row and cursor, we want to return the first one we run into. We want to return the format similar to just normal tasks. So we'll have an ID. This will be the first element. Going based off of the fields in the table. The first one will be the ID. The second one will be the description. That's row 1. The next field is done. We will say row 2, but since done is an integer, we want it to be a Boolean. We can quickly convert that to a bool. The SQLite doesn't have a Boolean type. And then the last one, we want to actually reference that task it belongs to. So that'll just be task ID, which is the third column in the table. And if we don't end up finding any subtasks, we can just return none in the other case. Nice. Okay, let's do it to me. So now we uncomment this line of code, and subtasks should be the subtask we get. And if this subtask is none, then we want to return a failure response. Could not create subtask. And this is just for any reason, we don't really know. So we'll add in the code 400, forbidden. And then otherwise, if we do find a subtask, we'll just return our success response. And this response will contain the subtask in question. And instead of using the default 200 error in success code, we'll add in 201 because 201 represents a new created thing versus just success. So that's create subtask. We can try out that in Postman, although we can't really select subtasks quite yet. So I do have a task in here right now, task ID 1. So if I want to create a new subtask, I need to give its ID. Oh, it's way too small, isn't it? Yeah, it's better. And I also need to say subtask and slash. And so I'll put in relational DB demo. We don't actually have a done send. I'll send this. Oh, maybe I got the URL wrong. Let me see. Subtasks. This needs an S. JSON decode error. So let me see where this is showing up. It's probably in db.py where I made the. Oh yeah, you're right. This should be values. We can see the error if we should look up here. Well, I think there should have been something. Let me plug in my laptop. Let's try it again. I'll send it up. Okay, let me see the terminal. So where's the error showing up? Insert into subtasks, values. I think one way to debug this is to actually print out what's being created. So let's print out subtask. Let's see what shows up. Set the property name, closing double quotes. This is occurring in here. Oh, I think I need to get rid of the comma. Yeah, it's kind of annoying. I forgot the comma when I deleted done. So it said the JSON was invalid. So I got the subtask back here, but I just returned it. So let's see if it's actually in the database. So using the SQLite Explorer on the bottom, I'm going to refresh this and click the play button. And in the subtask table, there's a new subtask that shows up and it references task ID of 1. So that's good. We can create subtasks now. Now let's move on to our next endpoint. Get subtask of a task. Go here. This is going to be just endpoint. Endpoints for getting all subtasks for a task with task ID. So this endpoint, it is under like the create subtasks under a task ID slash subtasks. And this is the get request on that endpoint. So it's the same URL as the other one, but we use a get request. And we just want to get all the subtasks for a given task. So this should never fail. If there's no subtask for a task, it just returns an empty list. So we can just return success response. And then we can say subtasks. And we need to use db.get subtasks of task and then task ID. So we do need to actually create this function. And this function should look in the database and get all the subtasks for a specific task given by task ID. So let's go do that. I'm also going to get rid of this print statement. And the server. So here, get subtask of task. This just takes in the task ID, and let me make the doc string. Using SQL, this function will get all the tasks, subtasks, I mean, given a task ID. So the way we do this is similar to other database functions. We set up the cursor, we use self.con.execute, and then we start our SQL statement. So we want to use a select statement, right? We want to select all things from subtasks. So how do you guys think that we should actually get the subtasks for like task ID equals 1? So this gets all the subtasks, and we want to limit it to the specific amounts. So does anyone have any ideas on what to do next? So limit, what is it? Like limit? So limit limits the amount of return values. So if we had like 50 total values and we say like limit 10, we'll only get 10 of them. But we want to find a way to get the specific subtasks for, say, task ID of like 1. Yeah, so we want to say where task ID equals the given task ID, right? And this one will be ID. You can call this a parent ID, so it's more clear. So select all from subtasks where task ID equals the parent ID. We're going to store our subtasks into a list, since we're going to get multiple. So when we loop through the cursor tuples, so for each row in the return database output, we're going to add to the subtask list. Subtask append, and it should be in the same exact format as get subtask by ID. So I'm just going to copy from get subtask by ID, and I'm going to append dictionaries containing the subtask ID, its description, done value, and the task ID. Hope that's not going to cause any problems. And after that, I'm going to return subtasks. So we don't need to have any none, since if there are no subtasks, it'll just return this empty list. So we don't need to return none anywhere. And now if we go back to get subtasks of task, we will return this list in here. It'll belong to the subtasks key. Let's see if I'm good on time. And then we'll return a success response of that. So let's try out doing that. So like before, we have a task 1. If I want to get the subtask of task 1, actually, let me make another subtask. Finish relational DB demo. I'm going to make a second subtask. And now I want to get all the subtasks of task 1. So trying this out, I get a JSON. I'm going to make this look better. I think if I do this, that looks way better. Yeah. Now I have a list of subtasks, subtask 1, subtask 2, and I only need the parent task to do that. So yeah, I think the final function we need now is, let me see. Yeah, I think just get subtasks. This function will just return all the subtasks in our table. So let me just start that out. This is an endpoint for getting all the subtasks. And this will just return success response, since we can just return an empty list if we find nothing. And it should be in the same format as get subtask of task. So we can say subtasks. And then we'll use a DB function, DB get all subtasks. And since we're getting all of them, we don't need any parameters. and that looks good to me. Let me turn off the server. So how do we actually make this function? Let me scroll up. I think it's basically just like get all tasks. So let me make a docstring using SQL get all subtasks. If we do the same thing as the other functions, we can start with the SQL statement. This will just be select all from tasks. No, not tasks, subtasks. And then we just want to loop through all of them. So for a row and cursor, we want to keep track of these. So let's have a subtask list. And then we'll add to that list every time we find a new row. Subtask.append. And I'm just going to copy and paste the format from last time. So ID, description, done, and task ID. And we can just return subtasks. Okay, it looks good to me. Weird error here. I'm seeing white space around operator. Yeah, that's just my styling thing. Yeah, it looks good. So now we will just return all the subtasks may run this route. So get subtasks is just like get tasks. It's just slash subtasks. It's one of the base routes. So let's try that. Let's try that. Actually, wait, no. Need to start my server. Can't forget that. I'm gonna make a new tab for this. So localhost. I'm using 5,000, I think. Instead of doing tasks, we're gonna say subtasks. Now we're gonna run it. And we just get all of the subtasks in our database. I'm gonna try adding one for a different task just to show off that this actually works. So I'm gonna make a new tab, localhost, tasks. I'm gonna post. Make it, oops. We have a little bit of time left. So I have a description. Second task. We'll make this one. It says ID 2. So now we're gonna make a subtask for this one. So we'll go turn this to 2. We're gonna post, and we're gonna say finish the above. That was created. And now when I run get on all the subtasks, hopefully that new one shows up, even if it's from a different like parent task. And yeah, so relational DB demo, finish relational DB demo, and finish the above, and has a different task ID from the others. And I think that's all. So there's one more thing we can do. This is going to be like going back into the old code, but what if you want to like get a task and then also see all of its subtasks? So if I say get tasks 1, I don't actually see its subtasks in the table. So let me see. Look at this. So what we can do is go back into get tasks. And we can actually modify the task variable. So we can say subtasks equals db.get subtask of task. And the task ID we have here. It might be good to actually put this in the if statement, just to make sure that this task already exists. And then we can say tasks, a task, put in its new, give it a new key called subtasks. And we can set that subtasks. So all this is doing is finding that task subtasks and putting it in the task dictionary as a subtask. value for, yeah. So if I were to get that task now, I should probably see its subtasks. So let me try this now. And yeah, when I search for a task one, I also get a list of subtasks that belong to it. And that kind of shows the power of one-to-many relationships. You can just reference everything from the parent, and that's why it's pretty cool to use. And we can do the same for multiple other routes that return tasks. So like here, an update task, we can return the subtasks, and delete, we can return the subtasks. Where else? At this point, it's kind of just copying and pasting. Yeah, I think that's it for the demo. So hope you guys enjoyed learning about relational databases in Python and SQLite. Nice.